Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa, France 24's program focused on the continent. I'm Charlie James, filling in for Georgia Calvin-Smith this evening, and these are our headlines. Protesters in Algeria make it clear they do not accept the presidential election results. They are vowing to keep up their movement following Abdelmadjid Tebboune's win. Niger holds funerals for its 71 troops killed in a jihadist attack. The president called their deaths glorious, saying to die with weapons in your hand is one of the best ways to die. And France 24 takes you to an exhibition in Dakar with African art all about dreams. The traveling show spotlights both new and established artists from across the continent. And we begin in Algeria, where protesters turned out in major cities Friday in anger over the presidential election results. Former Prime Minister Abdelmadjid Tebboune has been declared the winner, inflaming the protest movement, which has called for fresh leadership. Tens of thousands of demonstrators demanded free and democratic Algeria and rejected the vote results. Tebboune, meanwhile, used a televised speech to reach out to members of the pro-democracy movement.
The first decision that I will take as president is to engage with the Hirak movement so that we can quickly move forwards and enact real change in Algeria. We want to set a new direction for the republic with a new constitution and amendments made to it.
Sam Bradpiece has this report with more on reaction to the election.
The streets of the Algerian capital were stormed by tens of thousands of people following Abdelmadjid Tebboune's landslide victory in the presidential election. The former prime minister won 58% of the vote, but much of the population denounced the election as a farce.
We do not accept this president. We had no choice.
The people aren't stupid. We'll continue to demonstrate until they listen to our demands.
Ever since the election was announced, there were calls for a boycott. All 5 candidates were former allies of ousted President Abdelaziz Bouteflika, considered to be part of the old regime, with polls rigged in their favour.
Tebboune does not represent us. Neither did the other 4 candidates.
Everyone knew in the last 10 months that Tebboune would be president. His succession was prepared by the old gang. Thursday's election was subterfuge. The real turnout must have been about 8%, because no one voted.
The country's National Election Authority, on the other hand, said that turnout was close to 40%. As his supporters celebrated, Abdelmadjid Tebboune has a tough task ahead in building a bridge between the country's detested political class and the people.
And for analysis of the election result, William Lawrence joined the program earlier. He is a politics professor at George Washington University and specializes in North African history and politics. I asked him whether Tebboune and other established political figures are committed to overhauling the system or more interested in holding on to power.
They're more interested in holding on to power. It hasn't been himself, but the generals and the other ministers have been calling the protesters mercenaries and traitors and sexual epithets and all kinds of names. I don't know how they thought that would get them to the polls. But certainly the name calling was quite vitriolic during the campaign. And there's really no indication that the regime is willing to make major concessions, even though Tebboune will probably be given some latitude by the regime to make the kinds of concessions a rich state can make right after an election. But that's unlikely to placate the crowd, because the way in which the economy of Algeria is structured is, the older workers get jobs, the younger workers stay unemployed. Most of the benefits can't go up by too much because of the limitations of what the budget can do. So I think the crisis is going to continue as before. There's no end in sight for the Hirak movement that started last February, and that's going to continue for the foreseeable future, because nothing about this election has placated the protesters, and both the regime and the protesters believe they can outlast the other side.
On Friday, Niger held ceremonies for the 71 soldiers killed in the biggest jihadist attack in the country's history. President Mahamadou Issoufou was among those paying tribute, decorating each soldier with the Cross of Courage. Pierre Deleroux takes us to the funerals.
Set out on the tarmac of an Air Force base near the capital Niamey, 71 body bags draped in the national colors, orange, white, and green. In front of their families and brothers in arms, President Mahamadou Issoufou paid tribute to the fallen soldiers.
Your sacrifice will not be in vain, for we are also determined on political, strategic, cooperative and tactical levels to further strengthen our alliances and the coordination of our forces to fight together. In the name of freedom, against the enemies of liberty, against ignorance and darkness.
Before their burial at the military base cemetery, President Issoufou decorated each of the soldiers with the Cross of Courage. The government also declared 3 days of national mourning. The 71 troops were killed on Tuesday night when hundreds of jihadists attacked a military base in Inates in the west of the country. The attack, claimed by the Islamic State group, is the bloodiest attack by Islamists in Niger's history. It's also one of the deadliest across the Sahel region, where military forces are struggling to fight the jihadist presence. In the last 4 months, more than 230 African soldiers lost their lives in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso.
The leaders of France, Germany, and Italy are urging all players in the Libyan conflict to stop fighting. Friday's statement was issued after an EU summit in Brussels, with the trio saying stability in Libya can only be achieved through a political solution. The statement did not mention strongman Khalifa Haftar by name, but it comes one day after he announced a decisive battle to capture Tripoli. However, Friday, Libya's UN-backed prime minister assured his nation there is no invasion of Tripoli.
Dear free citizens, do not believe the lies of those who are deluded, their words and rumors. There is no 0 hour, but only delusions. And there is neither control nor any storming of Tripoli and its neighborhoods.
After a successful stint in Casablanca, a contemporary art exhibition called Lend Me Your Dream has opened at Dakar's Museum of Black Civilizations. The traveling show brings together some 30 African artists, established ones, as well as rising stars of the art world. Our correspondent, Sarah Sacco, takes you there.
Wooden Giants by Ivory Coast James Coco B, Angèle Issamba's photographs, and the paintings of Ouattara Watts or Barthélemy Tugo, two of the heavyweights of African contemporary art, have arrived in Senegal. In total, 33 pieces by artists on the theme of dreams. Abdoulaye Konate, an artist from Mali, is part of the show. His contributed installations are made from fabric.
I'm looking for a new visually pleasing approach based on an analysis of our deep-rooted traditions, whether they're from Mali, Ivory Coast, or even from other continents.
The exhibition brings little-known artists on the African continent together. Art critic and gallery owner Yacouba Konate is one of the exhibition's two curators.
They often take part in travelling art exhibitions around the world, Düsseldorf, Paris, New York. And my take on it is that in the end, they'll have created something like a phantom memory of African contemporary art that's around in Africa, but hasn't succeeded in settling down. One of our goals is to give a body to all these ideas.
The show is attracting Dakar's art fans to the museum. Alexia, an art teacher, brought her students.
It's nice to have artists that look towards the continent or have something to do with it. But at the same time, you can sense the many influences in the techniques they used in their work.
The Lend Me Your Dream exhibition will open in Abidjan by the end of January, before moving on to Lagos and Cape Town.
Thanks so much for joining us for Eye on Africa. That's all for this edition, but stay with us here on France 24. My colleague, Sanam Chantier, is up next with more news you need to know.